The damage to the foundation would be heartbreaking. The damage to the cause would be catastrophic.
You know, I referred to Michael Holliday as a pickpocket in an Armani suit.
They say the best things in life are free, but you can give them to the birds and bees. I need money. That's what I want. That's what I want. Yeah. That's what I want.
Hi there, I'm Tom Natchu. Welcome to Fraud Squad TV. With all of these get-rich-quick schemes out there, it's hard to spot that individual who's outright lying to you. Finish this line for me. If it seems too good to be true. That's right, it usually is. But if we know this, how is it that so many of us supposedly smart people get caught by someone's lies when it comes to money? Well, the answer is simple. Fraudsters have perfected their techniques to find our weaknesses. Knock, knock. Who's there? Now, that's a question we all need to start asking. Door-to-door charity fraud is fast becoming a crime that makes victims out of the donor as well as the charity the fraudster claims to represent. It happens when someone comes to your door claiming to represent a legitimate charity. And since you're familiar with the organization, you make a donation and you receive a receipt. The trouble is, neither the receipt nor the canvasser are real. Not only have you lost your money, but the charity being misrepresented loses credibility for future legitimate canvassers. Let's take a look at this. Stephen Lewis is the founder of the organization that bears his name. He's known worldwide for the work that he's done to prevent AIDS in Africa. It's organizations like his and other organizations that do important worldwide work that are suffering from this type of fraud.
The overwhelming majority of contributions to the foundation come from individuals. Between 50 and 60,000 individual Canadians have made contributions. Almost nothing from the corporate sector, almost nothing from the foundation sector, almost nothing from the government. The harm to the cause, if there was a fraudulent connection made, is calamitous. The whole foundation has been built on the basis of integrity.
Unfortunately, the legitimate charities are all impacted by frauds that are perpetrated against charities, as well as the sham charities that are exposed, because donors are then much more skeptical. Sometimes they might even associate certain types of organizations and certain types of causes with fraud.
One of our donors called us and let us know that someone had come to them and asked for money on our behalf. And when we asked what it was about, it was no relation to any event that was happening, so we explained to them that they weren't operating on our behalf, and then we called the police.
It becomes a vehicle then, since people are so generous, for those scoundrels who would wish to bilk the process.
In January 2006, he came to the door, which is not that unusual for our neighborhood, and said he'd been here last year. Did I remember him?
Perhaps you could help us with $50 or $100. I'll give you $50 or $100. It'd be really great.
All right, can you hold on just a moment? I know my husband had given previously, and so I donated another $20. He then gave us his charitable tax receipt with the charity listed on the bottom and the registration number, which is supposed to confirm that, in fact, he is a charity. I did ask for a brochure from the charity.
Can you give me some sort of brochure or flyer?
And he told me he had just run out. We checked on the Revenue Canada website with the name of the alleged charity and the charity number on the bottom of the receipt. It indicated that, in fact, it was not a charity, which meant that he was a fraud and that we would not be getting our tax credit.
Rob Dryden admits that there were a few $1,000s lost in donation to these fraudulent canvassers. But more important than that, it's the damage done to the organization itself.
The effect is that the legitimate charities are then subject to much greater regulation and oversight by government agencies and regulators, making their administrative efforts much more difficult.
It's outrageous that money would be siphoned off for suspect purposes.
We do a lot of great work, and we work very hard at making sure people know who we are and what we stand for. And integrity in this business is primary. And when someone goes and uses your name and takes money from someone, that donor doesn't receive a tax receipt, doesn't receive a thank you letter, it undermines everything that we've been trying to do.
Well, thank you very much.
It is a white-collar crime in the sense that he hasn't physically hurt people in the community. However, he has hurt the charities who are trying to raise funds legitimately, and he's also hurt the individuals from whom he's taken money.
So what should you do if a door-to-door canvasser comes to your door and claims to represent a charity?
I would suggest, if you don't know them, don't give them cash. You could choose to write a check to them, or better yet, you could get their name and go onto the organization's website. The majority of organizations have websites that you can donate on, and make a donation on behalf of that person.
My wife and I are careful. We demand to see the identification, and we authenticate it. You just have to be on guard all the time.
Fundraising is everything to us. We don't receive any government funding, so the only money we have to operate on is from donors themselves.
Since being defrauded, we no longer donate to people who come to the door.
The damage to the foundation would be heartbreaking. The damage to the cause would be catastrophic.
They say that charity begins at home. But when someone comes to your home claiming to represent a charity, it's down to you to show the due diligence to make sure that you and the charity aren't being defrauded. For more information on this type of fraud, you can go to our website at fraudsquadtv.com. Craig Hannaford, with 25 years in law enforcement and the president of his own security company. When the girl guide comes to the front porch, she's wearing a uniform, and that's why I buy her cookies. In fact, I buy a lot of her cookies. But almost every weekend, there's more and more people at the door asking for money for charity. How am I to know the legitimate ones from the illegitimate ones?
Well, it can be a real challenge to determine if it's a bona fide charity representative that's coming to your door. But what I would say is ask questions. Ask questions of the canvasser. What is a charity all about? Where are their offices? What are their programs? What are they spending their money on?
But the victims aren't just those of us who end up with a phony tax receipt. The victims can be really the charities. Lots of us want to give to charities. How do we do that?
Well, it can be an easy trap. You can call the office of the charity to confirm whether that person is actually a bona fide canvasser for that charity. If you get a phone call from a charity, check the charity out on the internet. Ask them to mail you the information so you can review it. Don't impulsively give to a charity. Research the charity to ensure it is legitimate. If the charity or the canvasser is pressuring you to make an on-the-spot donation, you should be suspicious.
It's a shame. And like all fraud, it's kind of changed the way we have to live. So even with charities and come door to door, due diligence is your part. How do you know when to trust an investment broker? The story you're about to see is one of the biggest investment frauds in stock market history by a single con artist. Young and ambitious investment broker Michael Holliday defrauded major brokerage firms and successful investors out of more than $20 million. How did he do it? Take a look at this. Over the course of this season, our writers at Fraud Squad TV will bring you tons of stories that are absolutely frightening, but none more than this one. This is a story about a Vancouver native who becomes a Bay Street financial whiz kid, only to learn the trade and then defraud innocent people over $20 million worth.
I referred to Michael Holliday as a pickpocket in an Armani suit. With Michael Holliday, it's as if they took every aspect of investment fraud and put it into one personality. That is, that he used every tool in the book to become successful. Somewhere along the line, Holliday got big plans to become a big city success with lots of money and lots of power, so naturally he gravitated to Bay Street. He went up and down Bay Street for a couple of days, literally begging any of the brokerages to take him on. And his first day of work was called Black Monday, the day the stock market plummeted 20%. That's how Michael Holliday's career began, and I've always thought that's a bit of a marker of some sort.
Holliday is the type of person that you would meet on the street, who is a very calm, cool, collected individual. Probably one of the most dangerous people out there with respect to these types of crimes.
Yeah. How does a scumbag like Holliday weave such a perfect web of deception so as to suck his victims in so quickly?
One of the things about these fraud artists is they're not great geniuses. Everyone I've looked at, including Holliday, have essentially used very simple devices, all of them built on trust, and this is the important thing to remember.
He was working for one of the major investment dealers. I knew it wasn't a fly-by-night brokerage firm. In my job, I was traveling about 10 or 12 trips a year, so it was very good for me, the amount of business travel I was doing, to have somebody that I could trust. And he explained that because of the fact that I was away so much, that the moves in the market were time sensitive, and because he couldn't always reach me, would I be prepared to give him discretion to trade when he saw it was appropriate?
We're going to get you to sign one of the documents here and one under. Fantastic.
When will I get the rest of this money?
When you get the rest of this money?
According to government figures, Canadians lose $5 billion a year to this type of fraud. Americans lose $1 million per hour to investment fraud. How do otherwise intelligent investors consistently fall victim to these high amounts?
Everybody does have an element of greed within them. The idea that if they can make $1 faster than they can earn $1 from their employment, why not give it a shot?
And he would show you on a monthly basis the returns that people were getting. And I did have a friend who also had gone to him as a client and was doing this kind of trading and was very happy with these phenomenal profits that he was making. Like it was like you couldn't miss.
Michael Holliday was earning over $1 million a year in commissions. This was unheard of. He was elevated to the President's Club, which made him one of the top 5% of producers in the organization. This was their shining guy. This was their golden boy. But somebody at the brokerage said, how is he doing this? Because we'd like all our other guys to do it. And one of the board of directors members went to talk to Holliday, came back and said, I can't figure it out. And they said, well, let's leave him alone because $1 million a year is $1 million a year. He would say to clients who called and said, hey, I just got my statement and my account is like 90% of my money is missing. What's happening? And his response would be, oh, they've screwed things up at the computer. Look, I'll find out what it is and I'll give you my personal statement and tell you where you stand. And people would toss away these computerized statements and accept this hand-scrawled statement saying, you didn't actually lose $90,000, you made $40,000. And here it is, and trust me, and they did. And of course, they felt terribly foolish afterwards.
Lo and behold, there's a letter for me from the compliance department of First Marathon to advise that the losses to date were something in excess of $148,000 US.
When he joined the second brokerage, he came with this great record of producing enormous commissions every year, even though nobody could figure out how he was doing it. So he asked for and received a special title. And with the second brokerage, he was named Managing Director, Futures Division. Now, as soon as he proposed certain opportunities, investment opportunities to his clients, opportunities that most people would never buy, it was always backed up by his position as a managing director of the company. People who are involved in these kinds of fraud activities have a very limited horizon, and the horizon ends maybe 2 days from now. They're not worrying about how they're going to pay the money back next month, next year, anytime at all. He spent it as fast, or maybe even faster than he made it.
It wasn't long before, I guess, they had enough complaints from other clients who were getting nervous. And what he was doing was just shifting the money around from one client to another.
That over his period of about 3 or 4 years, he stole something beyond $20 million. And when he was finally caught, there was nothing left.
The worst horror story to me was that his wife's sister had given birth to twins, and they died just shortly after birth. and Michael was going to pay for this sumptuous funeral, and they were buried in Mount Pleasant Cemetery. And then he didn't pay for the burial. So they had to dig up the babies and move them to another cemetery.
It didn't seem to bother him that what he was doing with people's livelihoods and life savings resulted in ruining families, breaking families down, and people considering taking their own lives. There is actually no remorse. Certainly there was none at the trial or at the time of conviction as well. He felt he was victimized even as he's being led out of court.
Interestingly enough, for the first half of his preliminary trial, he was represented by a very high-profile criminal lawyer. The second half, he represented himself because the lawyer simply wouldn't believe him anymore. Now, if your own lawyer doesn't believe you, I mean, what does that tell you? At his preliminary trial, the second half, and at his full criminal trial, which lasted 3 months, Michael Holliday represented Michael Holliday, and the judge bent over backwards to persuade him to ask the questions, to defend himself in an effective manner, because she did not want an appeal to be won. Even at that, he was declared guilty on all the charges. He was sentenced to a total of just under 9 years in prison.
Investment fraud, like any type of fraud, needs a susceptible victim to work. Now, this is a more affluent society than it's ever been in the history of mankind. And with that affluence, we all grow more sophisticated. We all want a good deal on the stock market. If one is offered to you, it's incumbent upon you to do your due diligence and make sure that you're not the next victim of investment fraud. For more information on this type of fraud, you can go to our website at fraudsquadtv.com. Craig Hannaford from Hannaford Partners, Inc. I know you're working on this because I'm hearing about it all of the time. It seems a shame to have to ask, but how do I know my broker is legitimate?
One of the things you should do is check with the provincial or state regulator that looks after brokers and investment advisors. They'll be able to tell you if an investment advisor is licensed, if an investment advisor has had any complaints registered against them, and this is a good start.
The customer is really motivated by making big money.
Well, you know, there is that element of greed in all investments, but if you approach your investments in a rational manner, you realize that you're going to make a reasonable rate of return. And if you're happy with that, you can do very well over the long term. If you're going for an investment that has a high rate of return, a higher percentage rate, there's a much greater risk, and you have to be comfortable with the risk that you're taking. The most important thing is to discuss with your investment advisor the investment that you're making, understand the risks, and do the due diligence with the investment to ensure it's something that you feel comfortable investing in.
So no matter with whom you invest or how you invest, make sure you check the broker out first. Now here's Craig with some tips.
Always research a potential investment. Get details of the investment in writing. Be suspicious of anyone who promises an investment that has no risk or big profits fast. Don't be pressured into making an investment decision quickly. Check out the investment company and the salespersons with the regulating government agency.
So, as in most forms of fraud, the due diligence is down to you to make sure you're being played fair and straight.
Have you or anyone you've known been the victim of a fraud or a scam? Well, unfortunately, many of us have, and we need to take better care in protecting ourselves. Debit and credit cards are used more frequently than cash, and they've become a favorite target for fraudsters. Not only will they steal cards from your mail or make fake ones from stolen information, incredibly, they will even sell your information to other fraudsters. In this segment, Fraud Squad TV takes it to the street to hear some of your stories.
What happened to me is that I left my wallet in my car accidentally. Someone broke the window, got in there, and I thought all I lost was my cash, but I found out maybe almost a year later that someone had taken my ID and they used it to make up a bank account, and they started cashing bad checks using my name. And so I got all these bills from hotels and even a department store saying I owed them a few $100 for these items. But eventually I was able to clear it up. It was just kind of a pain, but it could happen to you.
I was going to the bank to get some money, minding my own business, and somebody approached me in the parking lot to give me some coupons for an all-you-can-eat restaurant. Got the coupons, paid the $20. It's supposed to be a major discount. And then we get to the restaurant, and the restaurant doesn't even honor the coupons. They looked at us like we were crazy.
A month I did not get my Visa bill in the mail, and I called them up and asked them to send me a copy, which they did. And then the following month, I checked my accounts, and there was $4,000 missing on my account, or that had been spent on my account on that card. And so what had happened was that they had obviously intercepted my bill in the mail, and then when the bank sent out checks to my account so I could write checks against my Visa card, they intercepted those as well and wrote, they had my name then, and they had my account number, and they had everything they needed. So if you don't get your bill in the mail, hit the panic button.
Your personal information is as valuable as the money in your bank account. Don't give up either easily. Protect your PIN and never allow your card to be swiped twice. And always review your monthly bank statements. I'm Naomi Joy for Fraud Squad TV.
Thanks for watching. Join us again next week for another episode of Fraud Squad TV. And remember, you can visit our website for more information on today's show. To learn about more fraud stories and even tell us your story, you can go to fraudsquadtv.com. Let's fight fraud together.